Hey everyone, my name is Todd Jones with Copy Flight, and I wanted to do a quick video today um, about the 4 types of stories for business. So if you know me very well, you know that I am indeed a fan of business storytelling, and I'm going to talk about that. Before I get there, I want to go through a few things. First, one of the common questions I'll get along the way is not often, but it will come up eventually, and it'll be some version of this question. Do you use Storybrand for your copywriting, or do you follow Storybrand from Donald Miller? That kind of question. And so the short answer is no. Well, yes, but the long answer is no. And I'll get into that in just a minute. But I have the book. I've had the book for several years, actually. I bought it early on when it came out, and certainly have read through the book. I know what Donald is doing. I do not have the certification. So that disclaimer for you. So I cannot speak to what you learn in the certification course. I don't know how deep they go into what they do. And I'll get into that in just a moment to explain some of the reasons I don't have the certification. But using Storybrand for what I do, there are a few problems with the approach, I believe. So first of all, let me just say, I think it's an excellent book. I think you should buy it. I think you should read it because it's likely going to reset your framework about how you view yourself and how you view the customer. One thing I definitely love about Storybrand is it helps people reframe the fact that in your marketing story, the primary marketing story, your customer is indeed the protagonist in the story or the hero in the story. Now, Donald takes a chapter from The Hero's Journey, which was originally put forth by Joseph Campbell in a book back in the 60s. And most people begin to realize what the hero's journey was whenever filmmaker George Lucas said or admitted that he used the framework from the hero's journey to write and produce the first Star Wars epic. So it became something that people realized was being used in stories or in movies, if you will, and in stories as well. And so you can Google hero's journey and see what that means. All the nuances that are in. It's kind of long, actually, but it is very sophisticated and a very good story framework. There are other story frameworks that are used in movie storytelling, and I won't go into that now, but that is one of the most common ones you'll see, the hero's journey. So you'll see that in films like Star Wars and other films. But so my problems with using this approach completely for what I do, brand storytelling, web copywriting. First of all, it tells one story. Now, it is the primary story, as I said a while ago. It is the main story, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But it only tells one story, and so I think there's at least 4 stories. I'll get into that later in the presentation, but I get that from a book by Kindra called Stories That Stick. The second problem I have with using this approach is it doesn't account for voice of customer research. Now, let me back up and just say, as I said earlier, I've not taken the certification, so I do not know if it goes into this in the certification training. They may go deeper into it and talk about voice of customer research, but having spent time in the conversion copywriting world, to learn about voice of customer research and the need for it to help decipher the language that your target audience is using. And if you're not careful, you will be throwing darts at a board trying to hit the target because you're kind of guessing at what should be used. You need to know what your store or what your customer, what your target market is saying about the solutions and the problems and the solutions that you're trying to solve. So I don't see that the Storybrand, from what I can tell, just reading the book, goes into voice of customer research very well. Number 3, It's out of my price range. Not the book per se, but the whole certification. I've heard various amounts of how much the price is on the landing page. They do not give you the price, so I can only go with what I've heard. But now, can I use Storybrand or the hero's journey to do brand storytelling for your business? Sure, because I have the book. I have actually gone to the book more than once, and has actually used it to some degree in some website copywriting that I have done. So, but as far as being actually certified, I am not, because it is indeed out of my price range. Perhaps one day it is something I would be able to afford, but right now it is not. One final issue that I have, when you use Storybrand, or if I use Storybrand or anybody's using Storybrand, you're hitching yourself to someone else's framework. Nothing wrong with that. That is a business model that has worked for many, many people. So people are coming to me. I have to depend on the fact that they're looking for a Storybrand copywriter or a Storybrand guide, whatever the certification is that I get. And that's fine. But the problem is I want to my own, I like to create my own framework, if you will. And I have done so and working on a new one, actually, as we speak. And what I do, I want to take brand storytelling a little bit broader. And so for that reason, I want to talk about 4 stories in business storytelling. And as I said earlier, it comes from the book Stories That Stick by Kindra Hall. Picked it up last year. Absolutely fell in love with it. Felt like it was a little more comprehensive than what I got from Storybrand. And the other thing is that Kindra really places an emphasis on telling compelling stories. And there's a whole formula for that as well in the book. So the book has got an incredible amount of content that is very, very informational. Very well written, because Kindra herself is a storyteller, as is Donald. Donald Miller is a very good storyteller. So both books are easy to read because of that. But I think this one is something that I have aligned myself a little bit more with. And let me talk about these 4 stories. The first one is the value story. Now, this is actually what I believe Donald Miller is doing in the Storybrand. You are, and as Kindra says, you're bridging the value gap. So one of the analogies she uses in the book is the commercial that is titled Misunderstood, and is an Apple commercial for the iPhone. I think it was back in 2013, but it was earlier in the decade. And so this involves a scene where there's a family at the grandparents for Christmas, and everybody's enjoying the snow, and they're enjoying all the Christmas activities that's going on. Everybody's super engaged, but you have this one teenager that's over there, and he's on the phone. He's on the phone the whole time. Well, everybody else is enjoying all this stuff, and the family is just kind of rolling their eyes. He's not tuned in to what's going on. He's more interested in his phone, playing his games, etc. Well, what you find out is on Christmas morning, he puts a presentation he made on the phone, on the TV, with a slideshow of everything, a little video, probably more than a slideshow, a little video of everything that they had done over the past 2 or 3 days. And everybody was in awe. And it was one of those commercials where almost every time you see it, you don't have a dry eye because you're crying. So it's this ideal of bridging that story gap. And so what is the value of something? So as someone said, people buy what the product will do. They don't buy the product. They buy what the product will do for them. So that's how you bridge the gap, or you talk about the value. So if you are struggling with selling something, you may hear somebody say, hey, you need to communicate the value better. You need to make sure people understand the value better. And I've heard that, and I've had the same issue myself. This is what it's talking about. Can you find Can you bridge that value gap where people see that it's more than just a product? It's more than a web page. It is something you are building for someone. It is what that product or service will do for them. This is the value story. That's the first story. The second one is the founder story. This is one that you'll see quite a bit. It's usually popular in startup circles. In fact, I've written startup founder stories when I was working for a statewide business publication. That's actually what I did. I did founder stories. Not all the time, but we would do a few. They're feature stories, if you will. They tell the process of how the founder went from point A to point B and how they sought to solve a problem and how they got to that point. This is a very important story. It's one that needs to be told. It's very good for helping you with investors and also with publicity. Those two things are important in your the marketing of your business. And without the founder story, it can get lost in the shuffle. The third story is the purpose story. This one is more or less how your vision, your mission statement, your vision, and your values align with what your company is doing. You're making that connection for people. So you'll see often, in fact, a very good example of this is a local company called Tacos for Life, who they sell tacos, but it's more than just selling tacos, because for every, I think it's 27 cents that you spend, they will actually pass that on to an organization that helps feed starving children in third world countries. I call that the Tom's effect, because so many people do that little social model. And you'll see that Tom's does it. There's a lot of people who do this kind of thing, and it's worthwhile. But every company has a vision, they have a mission, they have values, and you want to tell the story of how that purpose drives your company. The last one is the customer story. And often the customer story and the value story are one and the same. So with the value story, you're trying to show how your product or service benefits the customer. So you're telling that story, you're telling where it comes together. And in the customer story, you're telling the same thing really, but think of it in terms of a customer success story. So how does your product or service change your customers' lives? What is it that takes them from problem to new normal, if you're looking at it from a business standpoint? So that is the customer success story. It's the same thing. I think those are humongous in terms of, especially if you're talking about it from a content marketing standpoint, it's bottom funnel content. And a lot of people use the word case study. And so case study is kind of the broad or the common term for it. But sometimes case studies are very data driven. And so you've got to find a success story and add the data and show how the data results in success for your customer. That's what people need in your marketing material. And so a lot of copywriters do case studies or customer success stories. There's many ways to do it. And I encourage you to check out a company like Case Study Buddy, who does that for a lot of B2B companies, or get you a copywriter who can write that for you. So those are the four stories that Kindra talks about, and I believe should be included in your total brand story. Your total brand story. So number one is the value story, bridging the gap of the value. Number two is the founder story. Number three is the purpose story. And number four is the customer story. So that's kind of where I come from, the four stories. And as I said, I'm working on a brand story framework myself, and it will include all four of these stories. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel or subscribe to the email list at CopyFlight, And when those things begin to roll out, you'll be able to find out more about that. Thanks for listening and taking the time. If you have any comments, leave them below. If you have any questions, feel free to ping me. You can ping me. You can leave a question below in the comments, or you can ping me on Twitter, Facebook, or even send me an email, or just any way you get hold of me. That'll be fine. And thanks for visiting or listening to me, and have a great day.